So welcome everybody to this presentation about quality coaching. I was very curious how many who would turn up, since this is a bit of a new role popping up and maybe not something that are deeply technical. Spoiler, it's not technical at all. My name is Gitte Ottosen. And already now it starts not wanting to work. So I've been in testing for 29 years by now. Actually, May 1st next year, I will have my 30th anniversary in testing. And as you see my name, and she did good timing, I am the other Gitte. We did this on purpose. No, we didn't. I actually worked together with Gitte many years ago as testers. Back in the days. And why do I have a picture of a small soldier down there in the bottom? That's me. Because that's my background. I don't come with a technical background of any kind. I've never seen the inside of a university. That's not true. I work with someone in the IT department on a university. But my background is military. So I came into IT because I was a super user. I knew the domain, and this company was building a big command and control system for NATO and needed someone who knew about the domain to test it. So that's how I got into testing. But over 29 years, I've been working with many different domains, many different platforms, many different roles as a tester, test architect, test manager, and now latest as a quality coach. And that's the role I would like to focus on today. It's quite a new role. You don't see too many quality coaches around yet, but it's something that we need to look into how to change. Because the thing is, if you look at most of the environments that we have now with Agile implementation, there are some roles that tend to disappear. Not always, but regularly, like the test manager. First, when I heard about people who stopped having test managers, it was because they didn't like the word manager in the end, because you can't have managers in Agile. Then they changed the title to test master. Just like a scrum master, we are now test masters, masters of the universe. But the thing is, the work that the test manager did is still around. The work around the test strategy, the work around implementing that, figuring out the right way to approach testing, the work around coordinating testing across many teams. If you are many teams combining your work into a common solution, that still needs to be done, even though the test manager is gone. I started in consulting back in 2012. And since 2014, I haven't had an assignment where I had a tester in the project. And when I say tester, and I don't mean a random person from the business that gets assigned to do some acceptance testing before we send stuff into production. I mean a testing professional who knows the craft and the profession as a tester, who knows about risk-based testing, who knows about test design technique, who can sit in the Agile team and support them. I haven't had any. Often I've been the only profile with anything about testing in the title. Because what tends to happen, at least in some of the projects I've been around, is that the Scrum guy says that it's a development team. So the team should only contain developers. So this team now needs to be able to analyze, design, code, test, integrate, and deliver software of high quality that supplies the business with the value that they pursue. That's the work of the Agile team as a collective group. That is also why we started hearing about the move from I-shaped to T-shaped. We need a deep competence of some kind, and then we need broader competences. So, like me, I'm a tester, but I'm always also a Scrum Master. I can do some requirement stuff because I'm actually a pretty good tester. We can do good requirements. And then suddenly the next one came up. a pie shape, and no, not the cake. No, not the cake. It's, now we got 2 legs. I even heard about the M-shaped. Now we have 3 deep things. The latest one I heard, and there I really were struggling to keep a straight face, was a comb-shaped. And pardon me, guys and girls. Look at the comb. The more teeth a comb have, the shorter they are. So at least it should be that kind of comb. Less teeth, but longer. Because the thing is, the more competencies you want to put into one person, the less depth you get. We're going from being specialists to being generalists. And the Agile teams, I'm pretty sure none of your Agile teams, and none of you are struggling. Oh, no. But some are. Some are struggling with quality. Some are struggling with figuring out what is the right approach to testing. Because our teams look a bit like this. And if you don't know the cartoon, I can only recommend to visit his website. He has drawings of all Agile anti-patterns you could come to think about. The thing is, we want this Agile team consisting of maybe 6, 7 people. And the ones that I've been working with most often are developers only, to be able to do everything from beginning to end. And the question is that really what they want? Is that really what the individuals want? Is that where their passion is? I know for sure I'm not going to do any development, and I think that's a really good idea, by the way. But that's not my passion. My passion lies in test and quality. So that's where I do my best work. So the thing is, do we really mean that? The challenge here is that when we have Agile teams that have the responsibility, pardon my French, from cradle to grave, of the entire life cycle as a team, they need a broad spectrum of competences. And that's where the quality coach come in. This model is from a lady called Marie Charette. I'm always sure to mention her because all I do concerning quality coaching is based on her work. She is an amazing lady who has a profound knowledge, not only about quality coaching, but about quality engineering in the life cycle. So I can only recommend to look into her. She drew this model, made this model back in 2022 of what a quality coach role is. And some of the things it says, I don't expect you to be able to read it, by the way, not in details. I know the font is small. But some of the things that says up there is a generic coaching, agile coaching stuff, like ADKAR, facilitation. We have something about advocating. But if we now take a deeper look on this model, there are things that are specific. Coaching on software testing practices. And I don't know if I have any Agile coaches in the room. Don't need to raise the hand because I'm going to tease you. But Agile coaches knows a lot about Agile. And in that sense, we also know, like what we heard from Kent Beck this morning, we know about test-driven development. We know the stuff about CI, CD. But testing is so much more than that. So we need coaches who knows about testing practices, and I'll dive into that one in a second. Whether we would do that as coaches, by mentoring, by advising, by training. But we need to support the Agile teams in getting better at testing. But also, in order to get better at testing, to focus on quality all the way through the life cycle and not ending up with a lot of horrible manual testing that no one want to do. And then again, not maybe testing too much because we don't know how the right approach is. We need to look into tooling. We need to looking into different techniques. We need to look into different approaches to quality. We need to look into how do we visualize quality? How do we talk about quality together with our stakeholders? And that brings me to the last one. We need to be able to explain what quality is. We need to agree on that. So these are some of the specifics. We need to visualize information beyond the team. Because one thing is that we know about the quality of the solution inside the team, but these are test-specific things that we need to do also, some of it outside the team. The quality coach will often be across several teams. They will not be inside one team only, but they will know enough to support the individual teams. And it's not so that we can say, this is a quality coach, you need to be exactly like this. That's not how it works. Again, Anne-Marie is drawing. There are sort of two types of quality coaches. There's one facing the technology, facing the developer, the one who knows about developing software, the ones who are deeply involved in tooling, the one who can sit together with a developer and talk about unit testing, unit test implementation, or good code reviewing. I can say the words, but I can't do code review because I'm over here. I'm facing the business. I'm trying to help the business becoming better to supply a better foundation for development, better requirements, better acceptance criteria, so that they are more decided on what it is they really want before we start building it. So what if you choose to say, okay, this is the road I want to go. I want to be a quality coach. We see the need in our organization. You need to build your own role. So you need to look into the different aspects of the role. Excuse me. And then you've got to figure out what works for me. Because two companies haven't got the same context. You will hear me say context quite a lot. It's all about being context-driven. What is the perfect solution in one context is the absolute worst solution in another. So you need to find out what is the quality coach in your context. But let's dive into some of these. Because the first thing I said was something about testing practices, either coaching them and mentoring, training, advising on best approaches to testing. What is that? One of the new terms that have come up the later years is quality engineering. We need to support the team in becoming a quality engineering team so that we are, as it says, it's about team members and their stakeholders taking joint responsibility to continuously deliver IT systems with the right quality at the right moment to the business people and their customers. It's about applying the right quality measures at the right time. And now you might be thinking, what is a quality measure? There's a couple of them. Whether it's test-driven development, pair programming, whether it's reviewing, doing root cause analysis on defects from production to figure out what can we learn from them. There are many. These were just a couple of the examples that came up in my head when I did this slide. As a team, we need to apply the best set of quality measures that matches our context. And for example, my last assignment was in pharma. So working with industry that produces medication, there's quite a lot of quality measures there in terms of reviewing, in terms of risk-based testing, but also in terms of documentation. A lot of documentation. That was not my favorite assignment, as you might hear. Liked the people, didn't like pharma so much. But and then you have the other end, a web-based solution, a website that, or maybe eBay. I was just about to say Bilbasen, but that's a very Danish site. And somewhere in e-commerce, where you need to be fast because time to market matters. You need to be first. There's another set of quality measures that you need to do. Because you need to be able to deliver continuously, all the way out. Not only to a test environment, but all the way out. So the quality measures are different. So the first thing as a quality coach you need to do is to sit down and figure out, what is my context? What is my domain? What is our platform? What is the competencies and skills within the team? What dependencies do we have to other teams? What defines quality in the eyes of a stakeholder? Figuring out what your foundation is, your context. And then the buzzword of all buzzwords the last 4 or 5 years, build-in quality and shift left. But from a testing perspective, it actually makes kind of sense. Because I've been a part of waterfall projects, as you can, I guess you can calculate your way back to me being in testing for 30 years. I've been in waterfall projects for many years. And I've been a part of that one where testing is a reactive activity. When everything is development done, we make a big integrated build and we do a test phase. Actually, we do several sequentially after each other. And we find bugs that we don't have time to fix because we find them too late. So we need as a team to figure out, how do we push those activities or that mindset left? And yes, you can also push it right and you can push it out and all different. I will focus on left for this presentation. So we need to figure out, what activities can we do to be sure that we are actually developing what our business needs and that we find out early. So what could that be? We need to think about testing from scratch, from the second we start looking at a feature. We need to have an approach to risk-based testing. And now you might be saying, oh, but we are thinking risk. Yeah, but if I ask you, can you show me that red thread from the risk with risk class to the test strategy you chose, the approach you chose, the amount of testing you did, to the communication you did to your stakeholders, so that they know that you have mitigated that risk. That's risk-based testing. We need the team to figure out, how can we have a flexible and pragmatic approach to risk-based testing, but so that risk is something we actively talk about. One of my recommendations, doing it as a part of a sprint planning. As you clarify your user story, talk about risk. And I don't talk about project risks. We'll be delayed, we don't have the right competences and stuff like that. I talk about quality risks or product risks. We are concerned that the performance of this might be problematic. We are concerned that this is key functionality for the business. It will break the business if this doesn't work. So we're looking into the solution. And then we figure out, so how do we approach the testing based on that? And then we tell how it went. That's risk-based testing. So do that clarification as a part of your sprint planning. It's not a separate activity, because it would be kind of nice to know, as you clarify your user stories, that someone is concerned about the performance of this implementation. Because first of all, you might consider doing some more code review that you have initially intended. Maybe you should consider actually doing some performance testing. That takes time. You need to know that before you start estimating your user stories. So before your poker planning, do some risk poker. That could be one approach. You need to figure out what that test strategy is. This is one of the fundamental drawings for Agile testing, the Agile testing quadrants. Originally designed by, I think, Brian Merrick, and I'm looking to one of the persons that I know knows everything about testing, so I hope she nods. I got a confirmation down here. But mostly known from the book Agile Testing by Lisa Crispin and Janet Gregory. And it's actually kind of logical, because it's not someone made a fun comment a couple of days ago that the Qs are because that's the first quarter, the second quarter of the year. No. And it's not necessarily sequential. It's just different perspective. We're looking down towards the technology. Did we build the system right? Or we're looking up towards business. We are building the right system. We are looking towards a team. How can we apply an approach to testing that will give us fast, continuous feedback? Unit testing, unit integration testing, testing individual user stories, being sure to focus on how to get that one automated, supplementing with something that critiques the product in terms of fit for purpose, that we look from the perspective of the business. Did we build what they needed? That's why we have a usability, a UAT, alpha and beta testing, maybe some exploratory testing. And then last but not least, the bad guy in the corner, the non-functional testing, all the elites. Security, reliability, availability, maintainability, portability. Yeah, you know, there's a sort of a rhyme there. But all the elites. And why do I want you to think about those? Because very often when we talk about user stories, we focus on functionality. Because that's the stuff the business asks for. That's the functionality. And we forget to talk about all the other elites. What is it worth that all the functionality is present if the security is as filled with holes as a Swiss cheese? What is it worth that the functionality is amazing technically if the usability is horrible? There are so many other aspects of quality than just delivering the functionality on the checklist. So as a team, the quality coach will facilitate the team to decide on how do we best possibly, in our context, approach testing. I, as a quality coach, do not take that decision. I'm not a test manager. I'm a quality coach. But I might teach them this, and I might coach them in the dialogue to figure out what is the right way, the right approach. And there are different abstractions. One of my very first war stories from when we started being agile in the company where Gitte and I worked was the concept of tunnel vision. We started doing feature-driven development. So we took our features and we broke them down into user stories. We were sitting in our agile teams. And we as testers had full focus on testing those new user stories. Each user story, of course, the developers did unit testing, unit integration testing. We were testing system integration testing on each individual user story, and everything was amazing until we started integrating stuff because we didn't think about the feature. The thing is, we are not delivering most often individual user stories. There's a higher purpose with what we are building. There's a feature, a group of user stories that adds business value. We need to be sure that we test that as a whole as well. That needs to be a part of our strategy as well. We need to focus on the business use of it. What workflows are we supporting? What is the business processes that this new software is going to support? We need to be sure that we have regression testing. How many of you rely mainly, do any of you rely mainly on manual regression testing? No? Oh, that's a couple. Yeah, it's because it's not, or most often it's not something we are entirely proud of. But the thing is, if we are working on a platform that's been around for many years, and we then transition into Agile and need to work with trying to be shorter iterations, sending things into production, we are now sitting with this huge pile of manual regression testing, which were all good back when we were waterfall. But it simply doesn't work inside the sprint. So we got to figure out how we do regression testing continuously. And that's, of course, amongst other CI/CD. So we got to figure out, as a team, how do we avoid tunnel vision? And that's a part of my job as a quality coach, to have that dialogue with the team. How do we make the best possible test strategy that will make us both effective and efficient? So that we test You know, there's the fairy tale about Goldilocks. So we don't test too little or too much, but we test just right. None of us want to test too much. We test what is necessary, but we need to understand how to figure that one out. And the quality coach has a role in figuring that one out together with you. Then there's the whole thing about test automation. Another model. This time I can't remember who drew it. Sorry. But what it says is that there's a solid foundation in test automation, and that's our unit testing. That's what goes directly into our CI. We supplement that automation with API level automation. We're still not touching the GUI. We're staying below the GUI. We top it off with something that are more GUI facing, maybe business process facing. And there's a reason why that is the top of the pyramid. That's because it's the smallest part of the pyramid. And then we supplement with manual testing. We as a team need to take that dialogue. How do we approach test automation? Way too many teams start building that pyramid from the top. And I don't know about you, but I think it's pretty bit difficult to build pyramids from the top. It works better if you start with a foundation. And the challenge that we are facing in many teams is this one. And I've been positive, optimistic in the layer of unit testing I've added here. And that's not because developers don't want to do unit testing, not at all. Developers would love to do unit testing, I bet you would. But do we have time? Do we have the right approach? Do we have the context that it is possible for us to make good unit testing? And then we end up with a huge pile of manual testing. And that is a completely no-no when it comes to trying to be agile, trying to deliver value as often as possible. The team needs to figure out, how do we establish a CI/CD pipeline? Maybe you have CI/CD pipeline guys in your team, maybe you haven't. Maybe this is supplied centrally, then you don't need to think more about it, but very often it doesn't. You need someone with that perspective to support you in defining your CI/CD pipeline. That's the technical quality coach. And then there's the geeky part. Yeah, until now it hasn't been geeky at all. Now comes the geeky part, because this is my favorite stuff in the entire world. Think about making testing a part of your requirements, helping your business to understand what they're building by the use of something called test design techniques. Old-fashioned stuff back from the last century, but it works. This is a data flow diagram showing a business process. I have a test design technique, so I can very fast tell you, depending on risk, how many test cases do you need in order to do sufficient coverage so that you are effective and efficient compared to the risk level. It's called process cycle testing. If you make the same drawing and it's on pseudocode, it's called algorithm testing. Because what I'm interested in here are the decision points. That's where the fun begins, at least from a testing perspective. Or what about data? You, of course, know. So when you implement a field, you know about the data validation. So you do equivalence partitioning and boundary value analysis so that when you do your unit testing and put data in, you don't just choose a random number, but you choose something that are within the different equivalent partitions with the boundaries, depending on how risky it is. You hear, what does he mean with equivalence partitioning and boundary? You do it. Many don't know the terms, but you do it. You know that if the field can take between 0 and 250 characters, you will not test 27. You will test with 0. You'll test with 1. You'll test with 249, 250, 251. That was a negative scenario right there. That's equivalence partitioning and boundary value analysis. But if we do it on many fields, for example, in a whole dialogue, this is as far as I'm on, that's tax calculations. Yeah. That can become a lot of test cases if you want to combine everything. Actually, it's 6,720 test cases. If I have to do all these are only equivalent partition. If I want to test all combinations, 6,720 test cases. Even though they're automated, it takes a while. But the thing is, there's a test design technique for that called pairwise. That'll bring you down to 35 test cases. And that's sufficient for most platforms. If you have higher criticality, you go with triple-wise. Then you got 170-80 test cases. And it gives you a higher confidence. And it gives you structure. You know what you tested. You can say, you can talk about coverage. You can talk about sufficient testing. Decision tables. Do you have business rules in your system? Amazing tool. Yeah, most tools have. Most applications have. The last one, I worked in a company that makes. You're not supposed to say windmills, turbines for the wind industry. And they had made a business rule, a set of business rules. They were like 3 or 4 pages of Word document. Word after word after word, and people were like, what? I sat down and I used this one trying to say, okay, so if I get the fundamental stuff out of there, what are the business rules? What are the inputs? What are the outputs? How do we handle each of the individual columns in there? This is a decision table. Actually, it's a part of business analysis training as well. They just turn it on 90 degrees around, but it's the same table. And most developer teams don't know about test design techniques. And that's where the quality coach comes in. I, on a regular basis, sit down with, maybe on a concrete user story, on a concrete feature, talk with the developers about the best approach to testing something. But it would be completely silly to create manual testing for those 178 test cases. The developer can do an automated test case in minutes because it's the same test case. We just need 178 different combinations of data input. So it's a way to be sure that the automated testing we do we know what we're testing. Then it comes to explaining quality. This is my favorite definition of quality. Quality is value to some person at some time who matters. Originally defined by Gerald Weinberg, supplemented by James Bach and Michael Bolton. Because the thing is, it's all about value. What is quality to me is not necessarily quality to you or to you. It depends on your context. So this is a dialogue that we need to have with our stakeholders, with our business. What is the value you're pursuing? Just another model, one of my favorites, called the voice model, where where the team will start discussing with the business, what is the value you're pursuing, both on an individual feature or in the project as a whole. You take that value and figure out, okay, so what are the questions they're going to ask to figure out whether they got the value they needed? And that gives you measurable objectives. Those objectives are most often measured by testing. And then you can tell your business whether they will expect to get the pursued value or not, and that can give them the confidence to make them decide whether they want to send this stuff in production or not. This is a very interesting dialogue to have with your business, and something that the team should be involved in so they understand, what are we here for? Or rather, why? Always start with why. So this is another part of the quality coach, is explaining and facilitating the dialogue around. So when we say quality in this context, what do we mean? It's a word we use a lot, but no one ever defines it. And how do we then know which direction to go? Then we have visualize information beyond the team and identify potential metrics. It should be a simple set. That's already too many. But it definitely shouldn't be that. That's an Airbus 380. Way too many dashboards in there. So that you find a simple way to communicate about quality of the solution that you as a team is responsible for. Something you all understand. There's nothing worse than a metric that you cannot explain. Or you don't know why we are measuring it. I will measure anything as long as you can tell me what you're going to use the measurement for. I need to understand the why. So that's a dialogue that the quality coach and the team needs to have. What is it? What are we measuring? We need to be able to communicate. But we also need to continuously improve. And as a part of that, we need to think about new approaches. Are we going to do some mob testing or mutation testing? What different tool are we having the right tool set? Or did we go to a no, sorry, the door is closed. Did we go to a conference and saw a tool and said, so ein Ding muss ich haben, and didn't really think about what are we going to use it for? What's the framework? What's the strategy? Too many, for especially automation tools, too many test automation tools end on the shelf because we didn't really think about how to use them, or they are carried into the company by a hero, someone who really is passionate about it. And when that hero leaves, the tool is no longer in use. So think about, there's so many things we can do to improve the way we work and make it more efficient so we don't waste a lot of time in testing and quality assurance. And that is something that where the quality coach should dive in. So what is it I'm talking about? Is it a superhero something? No, not really. It's a craftsman, or in this case, a craft woman. It's someone who is extremely skilled in the aspect of testing that they are going to work with. I'm very skilled in test design techniques, in agile testing, in the dialogue with the business. If you talk to me about unit testing, I'll be because I don't understand. Other quality coaches are extremely good at automation, at setting up the right framework, talking about infrastructure, ensuring that the work that you need to do in automated testing is as effective and efficient as possible. But they don't necessarily have too much in-depth knowledge about the other one. We build the coaches we need. But you need to have a solid foundation and knowledge about test and quality to go there. So look at the model, build your own, and take it from there. Thank you very much.